not having a well thought out plan prior to buying a property.
You know, we've had multiple conversations and we've come across multiple community owners that, you know, similar stories.
It's not just the homes, right? It's a community, right? So you have to worry about all these outside elements.
And we're back on the Mobile Home Park Exchange podcast. I am your host, Frank Rizzo. Joining me is my partner in the podcast in business, Eric Busuttil, and we're very, very excited to be with you on this podcast today. I think we're going to hit, look, we hit a lot of important topics on this program, and the idea is to provide information for people who are community owners or people who are looking to get into the space that they can find valuable while they own and operate a community. But a lot of times it's even before they come in to buy a community, because that's really where, you know, that's where I think a lot of mistakes are made before the purchase actually begins, right? So we thought it would be good to discuss what is something that could be the biggest mistake somebody could make prior to purchasing their park, right? Because we all know what can happen when you own a park, but prior to purchasing your park, what is maybe the biggest mistake an owner or a potential owner could make? So I'm going to ask my partner Eric if you have an idea of what you think might be the biggest mistake a potential buyer of a community can make.
First of all, Frank, great energy, by the way. How does your wife appreciate that energy on a Monday morning?
So the challenge, the challenge is, right, and we have this conversation all the time. I tell my wife Monday is my favorite day of the week. Right,
You just changed your time to rise to 2:30 now.
Yes,
right?
Yeah. Monday is my favorite day of the week, and I know that's because I look at it as when Monday starts, it's a whole week of potential opportunity ahead of us, and so I get really extra charged up on a Monday morning.
I would have to say, and not that there's a shortage of them because there's so many mistakes you can make, but I would have to say that the number one, because you're asking me what the number one is not having a well thought out plan prior to buying a property and not having enough capital to deliver on your plan. So many things can go wrong. Right?
I have to agree with you on that one, E. I think that not having the capital or allocating or underestimating what the cost may be to turn that community around is huge and could have consequences on that asset for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years.
And listen, we a lot of the stuff we talk about we know from experience, right? And we've owned other types of assets prior to going into this space, and if you think you're going to be able to renovate a community over a period of time from the cash flow, it's going to be very difficult to do that. Very difficult.
I'll give you, and I've had a conversation recently with a community owner, and it was a gentleman's first community that he purchased, and he purchased with partners that were going to guide him, right? And they had experience in the space, and the idea was that they were going to come in and provide some of the working capital in this park. It's 50 units. It's in a pretty solid market, and the challenge has been for him, as he was looking for infill, as he was looking to get work done, as he was looking to renovate and upgrade the housing stock that was there, he's constantly been pulling money out of the cash flow. So if there was not enough, if he had a down month in collections, or if all of a sudden he wasn't performing, the work that he was planning to do has been delayed, right? And so now you're when you're taking over a community, and the biggest thing is you want to get everybody to change standards, right? They don't do it in little bits and pieces, right? You have to when you want to raise the standards, it has to happen, where people understand that this is the new line that we have to maintain. If you're not doing it first, as the community owner, it is tough to ask, I believe, to ask a resident to do more for that community than you're able to do yourself.
Was that a recent example?
A recent example. I mean, within the last 30 days. And I've listen. That's one individual, but we've had multiple conversations, and we've come across multiple community owners that, similar stories. Just bought this park, thought that I'd be able to get this work done, started doing initial work, and then all of a sudden undercut. And haven't been able to get that community to where it needs to be, because I didn't allocate the capital necessary from the beginning.
Right, and we've been in that position, a few times. Not so deep, but
one
there was a one. Which property are you talking about?
We had one property that we in the beginning, very early, one of our early acquisitions that we had made.
Right.
Where we were very slim on the capital improvement budgets. We thought we could do, the surface improvements, the improvements that we saw, some road improvements, some lighting. Didn't take into account maybe some of the beautiful property, had a tremendous amount of trees.
Right.
And we did not take into account at that point how the roots and the trees would affect the underground infrastructure.
And what ends up happening is it becomes a drag, right? Because that property itself is a great property and it produces, but these issues arise sporadically, right? And what we should have done was estimated for this, and allocate a certain amount of money to handle these issues from the beginning.
Correct.
And the cash flow is great, but then you see, all of a sudden you need an excess amount of tree work, and the damage that the trees can do to the park. I mean, it's not just plumbing. I mean, there's homes there. Especially if you're in a property that are a lot of tenant-owned homes. Some of these tenants don't have the right insurances to cover their homes, and it just becomes a drag on the property overall.
And I think that's where we recognize that at that point. Since that point, I don't think that's been a challenge that we've made. That hasn't been a mistake that we've made since the acquisition of that community, right? So now when we go in and we have a budget, right, or we have an idea of what we need to do for improvements, we always over allocate, right, on that portion of it to ensure that we're able to get through the first 2 phases of improvements before we feel that the community can stabilize, right? And so typically it takes us about from acquisition to really turn around of it. You see improvements over the first 12 months, but usually it's between 18 and 24 months where the residents have started to buy into the changes, and the community at large. And I don't mean necessarily your manufactured housing community, but I mean that the city and the county have started to recognize that, hey, these new owners came in and they're really making changes. This park, which might have been known for one thing, is really now being known for something else.
And absolutely, Frank. And just remember, right? And I'm pretty sure we mentioned this on another episode. It's not just the homes, right? It's a community, right? So you have to worry about all these outside elements such as trees, such as, roads, or how trees and roads can affect the, sewer systems or septic systems. These are, not always, right in your face, right? But remember, it's not like buying a building where, hey, you're looking at the building itself, right? You're not only looking at the homes, but you're talking about the entire, infrastructure of the whole property.
That's a great point. So you do have to spend time during your due diligence period reviewing that and the potential hazards that might come your way in the layout of the park, right? So I mean that's a major factor going in, and I think having gone through that experience has put us, at least I feel, put us in a better position, because now when we look at a community, we're looking deeper than just maybe the housing stock, the surface utilities of what's there, making
Right.
sure the lines are okay, the roads are okay. I mean, that's very visible, but it's going that step deeper. How does the layout or the topography affect that community, or potentially affect that community going forward? If, like the community that we just purchased now, where we have 11 acres of undeveloped land, which we can, add on to the park, how will that affect putting in a water or a septic system or sewage system in there based on the topography? Can we develop that space out, right? And then what will that cost? What would the impact of that be? And so it's allowed us, having gone through that experience, to do a little bit of a deeper dive and make sure that we're tightening up and know exactly what that CapEx budget has to be, rather than pulling out of that community month to month, or having to put money back in month to month to handle some of these issues. And if you don't have the ability to do that, or you don't have partners that are willing to assist you in doing that, that could be a real challenge, because that could be a drag for a very long time.
Right, and the last thing you want to do is a capital call, right? I mean, if it's absolutely necessary, but that's the last thing you want to do.
Nobody likes to have to do that at any point, but fortunately, having had that experience, and look, part of the reason why we're doing what we're doing now is to share, our experiences. So this way, while you're out there and you're looking at a community, you can learn from that, right? And then you could say, well, what do I have to do not to have those challenges? Not that you won't have your own, but those are challenges that maybe will become easier for you to overcome at that point. So listen, if you like this program, right, if you thought this was helpful, you could find us on the Mobile Home Park Exchange. This is the Mobile Home Park Exchange podcast. I'm your host, Frank Rizzo, my co-host, Eric Busuttil. And the idea for this is we want to answer your questions. If you have questions, if you have questions that you'd like to have us discuss on air, you could click the link down below. We'd be happy to get those emails in and be happy to answer some of those questions that you might have regarding a community that you're looking at or a community that you might own. So with that, thank you very much for tuning into the Mobile Home Park Exchange podcast.
Thank you very much, Frank.